The Spanish viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata covered most of modern-day Paraguay, Argentina, Bolivia and Uruguay. But as the capital was in Buenos Aires and infrastructure was poor, many regions like Paraguay were left isolated or had closer ties to the viceroyalty of Peru. Plus the government was ran by the Peninsulares, white people from Spain, angering the Creole, white people born in South America, who wanted more authority, but largely the population remained loyal to the Spanish crown. However, a chain of events in the late 18th and early 19th century changed all that. The American and Haitian revolutions created new republics in the Americas, and the Enlightenment-inspired French Revolution spread liberal ideas and kick-started the Napoleonic Wars. When the French invaded Spain and made it a puppet, South America got dragged into the war, as the British invaded Buenos Aires in 1806. But the local population armed themselves and drove the British out shortly afterwards, and fought off another invasion a year later, all without the help from Spain. And the population remained armed as a new threat emerged, when John VI of Portugal fled to Brazil with the help of the British. So the population feared a joint British-Portuguese invasion, and although it didn't materialise, it could very well have done under John's wife Carlotta. She was the sister of Ferdinand VII of Spain, who had been arrested by the French, and she often plotted against her husband as she hoped the French would install her as a regent of the Spanish-American colonies. Some, especially the Creoles, supported Carlotta's claim, but most still remained loyal to the imprisoned Ferdinand. However, because Napoleon installed his brother Joseph onto the Spanish throne in 1808, the colonial authorities were now unwilling to support the Spanish crown. So juntas were set up as an alternative form of government. In Spain, the Junta of Seville led the anti-French activity and hoped to keep the empire united. But juntas were also set up in the Americas, first in Mexico and then in Montevideo under Javier de Ello. De Ello and his ally Martin de Alzaga tried to create a junta in Buenos Aires because the loyalty of its governor Santiago de Liniers was questioned, as he was French himself. But the local forces in Buenos Aires prevented this from happening, and de Liniers remained in power until 1809. The Junta of Seville replaced him with Baltasar Hidalgo de Cisneros, and he was tasked with forcibly removing Liniers from power because of his alleged French sympathies, but he peacefully stepped aside. However, that year further juntas were set up in modern-day Bolivia, starting the Bolivian War of Independence, which saw the nation free itself from the rule of Buenos Aires. And a year later, the Junta of Seville in Spain collapsed after a series of military defeats, meaning there was no real Spanish authority anymore. As Cisneros was appointed by the Junta of Seville, which had collapsed, his legitimacy to rule was called into question. In May, citizens called for a town council, but as Cisneros stalled, the military refused to give him their support. So he eventually yielded and split power with a Creole and a military commander. But demonstrations over his inclusion in this new junta forced him to resign, and a new junta, the Primera Junta, was established. There were disagreements within this junta, however. For instance, members like Marino Belgrano and Castelli were more radical, but largely, like with most juntas, they believed in handing sovereignty back to the people in the absence of the king. However, the South American colonies were now largely divided over this issue. Some favoured independence, others wanted a confederation of colonies under a constitutional monarchy, some were still fiercely loyal to the Spanish monarchy, some still backed Carlotta in Brazil, and others pledged their loyalty to the Council of Regency, a new junta in Spain which held very little permanent territory and had very little power. So the Primera Junta in Buenos Aires got a mixed response. Although most towns and regions in modern-day Argentina supported it, Córdoba did not. And de Ello in Montevideo decided to pledge his loyalty to the Council of Regency in Spain, and so too did the leaders in Paraguay, while in Upper Peru they did not pledge their loyalty to the Council of Regency or to the Primera Junta. So the Council of Regency appointed de Ello as the new viceroy of the Rio de la Plata, and he joined a coalition against Buenos Aires. First, Liniers, the former governor of Buenos Aires, rose up in Córdoba, but the Primera Junta dispatched troops quickly to meet this counter-revolution. Liniers' men deserted him, and he was executed afterwards. However, in the north, the viceroy of Peru aligned himself with Sanz, the governor of Potosoy, and Nieto from Chuquisaca. So the Primera Junta launched further campaigns in Upper Peru to target this new threat, while also trying to subdue Montevideo and Paraguay, beginning the Argentinian War of Independence.